Today I'm with Claire Bing, Head of Regulatory for Tarte Cosmetics. First of all, I would like to thank Shireen Coburn of Coburn Communications for allowing us to use her studio. Thank you very much, Shireen. Anyway, we're talking today because we are on, this September 24th through 26th here in New York. We will be having the 8th iteration of Cosmetic Compliance. It's a gathering of the top executives from such brands as Tarte, Estee Lauder, Chanel, L'Oreal, and this will include the executives whose responsibilities are to stay compliant with the regulations both in the U.S. and around the world. Claire, let's talk about you.
Yes.
How long have you been with Tarte Cosmetics?
Almost 6 years now I've been with Tarte.
What are your favorite Tarte Cosmetics or Tarte products?
I've been with Tarte for 6 years, so I have tons of favorites. This is our new knockout. It's a tingling treatment, so your favorite word.
Wow.
And it is
great. And tell me about cosmetic compliance. Are there any areas that are more difficult than others, or is it equally a challenge?
I think cosmetic compliance is one of the most fun parts of our industry to be involved in because it's challenging at all stages is compliance, from the development stage all the way to being on market. Cosmetic compliance is part of the DNA of this industry. You can't have a product on market without many stages of compliance. So to give one more weight than the other would be almost impossible.
And now, what was the big bellwether change in the industry? You said in 2012, or
yeah, in 2012 the EU Cosmetic Directive came out, and in 2013 it was enacted. And basically they created this huge foundation of safety, and they instituted this thing called the responsible person, meaning if you're not a EU-based company, you have a responsible person on market. So they make sure that you have a safe product on market, you have someone who's responsible for it on market, and you also guarantee that it's being monitored on market. They created the best word I know, which is called cosmetic vigilance. Cosmetovigilance means that they are vigilant about making sure that safety is being monitored on market, and it completely changed the industry. We had everything written down.
Is this, and has everybody pretty much towed the line with this, both in South America, Asia? I think of course, the Indian market, which is a burgeoning market. There have been a number of acquisitions there. But my concerns would be compliance in some of these developing markets.
Yeah, it's actually been really interesting that a lot of markets align themselves with the European Union because they themselves, it was easier to adopt something already written down. So they were able to bring it on. Singapore is a really great example. They created the PIF, which is inherently part of the EU Cosmetic Directive. That means the product information file. So in Singapore, they aligned themselves with the European Union. In other countries, they said, okay, we found all of these cosmetic ingredients. Thank you, Europe, for writing it down. There's safety. We understand now. And they started changing a couple of their ingredients, but also languages on packaging.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Making sure you have the warnings. You can't just, and we were talking earlier, you can't just dump product on these markets.
Right.
You have to conform with their regulations. You have to comply with these language requirements. In Mexico, everything must be in Spanish. It's part of their cosmetic compliance. But in the United States, if you have something that's OTC, for example, and you write it down in English and French, in the industry we love to have things written down in French, it makes us seem luxurious. It better be written in English because the US market consumer needs to have that written down. So at the same time, there's been all of these different laws that have come out about cosmetics. There's no true global harmonization. You'll never have that one box. But the safety, the ingredient safety, that foundation was, the tastemaker was Europe. It just, one thing I found about this industry, and I've been in tons of different industries, that's different in cosmetics is the all in this together kind of mentality. When I go to conferences like the Cosmetic Compliance, everyone is so team. We are the regulatory executives across all of these brands, but no one's, looking to be like, I'm not going to tell L'Oreal about that new regulation. Everyone's working together because at the end of the day, we all use everyone's products. I know one of the topics at the Cosmetic Compliance is about upcoming legislation, especially in the United States. So the Food and Drug Administration came out with most of their cosmetic regulations in the 30s. They haven't come out with any new sunscreen active since the 80s. We're living under things that when I was a little kid I was learning about in school. So now there's this big push because the European Union did it.
Right.
We should do it too. Let's come out with Safe Cosmetics Act. And the legislation that's out there, I think someone said, Claire, what do you think is the next big legislation? If I knew what this Congress was doing, I would not be in this industry. I'd be like in Las Vegas playing the odds.
Right.
I can't read their minds.
Why don't we just adopt what the Europeans are doing? I mean, is that...
Make my life easy. Let's do it. I don't think we can though, because there's also, you know what I talked about earlier, nationalism. It's our pride in who we are, and the thing about Europe that is different than the United States is the spirit of legislation. So in the United States, we have, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That person who is making makeup in their family's house, now they're in one store and now they're in another store, and they've made this huge business. I mean, Tarte was started by Maureen Kelly in her apartment.
God bless her.
Yeah.
I love those stories.
It's inspiring, That's what you want to do in life. You want to be able to build something from nothing that's very American. In Europe, though, it's the cumbersome documentation and providing these necessary tests. It's very cost prohibitive against that one person who's starting it in their apartment. The legislation that the United States is trying to propose, which is different than Europe, is to still have that mentality of entrepreneurship, of small business. America is small businesses, and they want to have nothing as a roadblock. So Europe is sort of like, they see it and they're like, that's great, but what about the small business owners?
And let me ask you, what was your first foreign market that you guys went into?
We went into Asian market. We went into Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. That was our first launch. It was a really soft entry into the global market. Europe has all of these responsible person, all of this legislation. It was hard for us to align ourselves as a small brand. Who would have known in 2001 about where we would be today in 2018? Because it's really that push. You hear so many people talking about, well, what are the ingredients? Before, I don't think I ever read an ingredient label before. I just was like, oh, it's going to make my skin soft? Great. Now, I think more everyday Americans and people around the world are reading ingredients and being like, I heard that might not be good for me. Does some research. It's like, I might not use that product. So we try to anticipate that in the development of our products.
Where do you see things going in the next 5 years? Both in the U.S. and globally. Yeah,
so I think one of the things is that we talked about earlier was cosmetic compliance in the United States. I really see the tide changing in the industry of pushing for legislation, pushing for guidance, good manufacturing practices, ingredient reviews, notification of active ingredients for sunscreen, so we can come out with these new innovative products that help Americans every day. That domestically, I see those three things increasing in a push from our industry. Globally, it's the same. Regulations are going to become more part of the fabric of cosmetics. Cosmetics has been operating internationally with, we have to conform with label requirements. Now I see them also doing the ingredient requirements, making sure that, everyone is complying with the ingredients of these products. And something that I haven't talked about that's really important is supply chain transparency.
Absolutely. This is, and I think consumers are more and more very attuned to this.
Exactly. And, the Nagoya Protocol, and everything that's going in, Nagoya Protocol, Convention on Biological Diversity, the World Health Organization, the UN, everyone's making a push that these big brands as well as small brands aren't exploiting people in these different countries that are not as developed, don't have as much regulations. And Tarte ourselves, we take that into consideration with development of all of our products. And having a supply chain code of conduct is something I see everyone in this industry moving towards.
I think that's fantastic, and I think it's really time for the big suppliers who make a lot of money to come out from the shadows and be transparent on their products, not just incumbent upon you, but also incumbent upon those very large companies
Exactly.
to show their, to be transparent. For the compliance meeting coming up in September, I want you to do my job for me and give me the headline that you would write.
Compliance, it's everywhere.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard to put it under one headline, but really, compliance is everywhere.